24-year-old Dermot REEVE, the local hero, no international experience because he's passed up the chance of playing for Hong Kong in the hope of playing for England. 11 first-class 50s, but 6 of them in 1987. 38-year-old Clive Rice from South Africa has won this competition twice before, in 1984 and 1985. Playing for South Africa, that's only an unofficial test record he's got there, but what a consistent player he's been. Richard Hadley from New Zealand, 36 years old, second greatest test wicket taker of all time with 355. He's won the right to bat third in this competition by hitting the stumps most in a bowl out before the start.
As predicted, neither Reeve nor Rice was in a mood to give up his wicket. Reeve, who scored 42, took control of Hadley's last over, hitting 13 runs. Rice, on the other hand, paced himself to 41. It's now Richard Hadley's turn. We join him in his second over. He's on 65, Rice is on 121, and Reeve, now off the field, is 114.
Clive Rice back into the action. And his field for the left-hander, he's got a third man, a square cover. The man just in front of square, right out on the boundary. Short extra cover. Mid-off again, halfway back to the boundary. Fine leg, square leg on the boundary, both of them. And a short mid-wicket. Now he's pushing his mid-off back to long off. And that's really the only difference between his field and Dermot REEVE.
Except his square leg is a genuine square leg as opposed to Dermot just behind, I think. A very, very ambitious shot right from the outset by Richard Hadley there. Ball pitched quite well up, and he swung the bat through it. He's one of the best strikers of a cricket ball in the game. Despite the man at long off, ball's quite well pitched up. Hits up and through it. Full flow of the bat. Well middled, 6 runs.
And that means he's just about on target already this over. 5 balls to come.
Well, that was a very pacey ball there by Clive Rice, getting a lot of bounce and thudding into the chest of the wicketkeeper.
Ian Kidd there, feeling the pace of that ball. The fielder's rotating all the time, so Ian Kidd from the MCC has taken over as wicket-keeper instead of Ray Brewster from Hong Kong.
That is a very awkward height, in fact, for the keeper. It was just at chest level, the level you just don't know which way to orientate your hands.
And another one he got some lift on, Phil. He's feeling very mean about that 6.
Yeah, he's feeling very competitive. I think he doesn't like to be shown up in front of any kind of crowd whatsoever, particularly by his Nottinghamshire mate. And those are 2 very aggressive balls. Fractionally full in length, perhaps that first one, which Richard Hadley hit for 6. And his latter 2 have been a little bit shorter. Slightly offline there, leg side, tickling it down to the long leg boundary for 1.
Well, with those runs off Clive Rice, he and Dermot REEVE are now neck and neck, 1-1-4 each.
It's in fact a very good over, John. However, started off with a handicap of 6 off one of the opening balls, of course.
Yes, it almost seems unfair. He's coming back onto the field, thinks he might get away with his loosener. And Richard Hadley thinks, right, I'm going to punish you straight away. He's tied him down now at the end of the over. He'll be happy to have got that back. As you say, very, very competitive. Scores at the end of that over. Dermot REEVE and Clive Rice neck and neck on 1-1-4. Richard Hadley up to 72. Richard Hadley, I think people tend to think of him much more as a bowler, but he is a tremendous bat. The first man to do the double in 1984 since 1967. 100 wickets and 1,000 runs in English county cricket, and that is some real achievement these days, isn't it, Phil?
Magnificent achievement. Of course, he has developed as a batsman in his latter years, so to speak, matured as a batsman. Some say, particularly with the advent of helmets, previously he was thought to be a little bit suspect against genuine pace bowling, but since the advent of helmets, he's been a genuine all-rounder.
Dermot Reeve. Not running in, just checking his marker.
Okay, Clive, I thought that was a very, very good over indeed, in fact, but you started off with a handicap of a 6 off one of the first balls of the over.
Yes, Richard, I bowled that right in the slot for Richard, and he obliged. But depositing it right out the ground.
And that's a very, very good catch on the leg side off Dermot Reeve. I was somewhat apprehensive for Dermot Reeve on that leg side boundary because Richard's very adept at flipping the ball off his toes, flipping it through that area, but Dermot had a man placed exactly in the right position.
David Evans there taking the catch, and again one of the Hong Kong fielders really does the business for the local man Dermot Reeve, and that changes the picture a little bit again.
It does. Clive, you must be quite pleased to see that.
No, I'm not pleased to see Dermot get the wicket, because him and I are vying for at a pretty similar stage up until then. Now there's a swing of 10 runs there, so I hope Richard whacks him for a few, just to equalise it a bit.
Well, that's true, but I think it's still a very, very long match ahead of you, and Richard Hadley, of course, is a magnificent competitor. Perhaps in the long term, I'm likely favouring the old hands against the young upstart here.
Clive, can I just ask you, are you thinking at this stage more about going into lunch with a lead?
Yeah, I'd like to do that if possible, just because you've got a slight advantage then in the second, this afternoon, in the second session.
Clive Bryce there thinking that going in last allows him to control the game, and I think that's where he'll be a little bit worried about that swing. It makes it more difficult for Richard Hadley to take the lead going into lunch, and leaves Dermot Reeve perhaps just the favourite.
And it's very significant now that Dermot has put those men back on that leg side boundary. He's swinging the ball into Richard Hadley. Richard Hadley's giving himself a little bit of room and hitting it leg side.
Of course, that wicket for Dermot Reeve means that that's the first time any of these three finalists have been out in the whole competition.
That's another magnificent blow leg side.
Alan Telford there, so anxious to try and take yet another catch behind the wicket on the log-on boundary.
Let's just watch this again. This is a typical Richard Hadley shot. Up and away, giving himself a little bit of room. Not a typical piece of fielding there. The umpire now somewhat concerned about those boundary balls that have taken a bit of a hammering.
Yes, it's important that they're replaced, because the local rule here says that it's not a 6 unless it clears the boundary board, so they've got to be upright. The PA announcer, they're a bit premature in ending Dermot Reeve's over. One ball to come. And again, Dermot throws down a loose one. on his last ball of the over.
Well, I think what happened there was he's a bit apprehensive of pitching the ball up in the slot because Richard's been clipping him over mid-wicket. He drops this short, and of course that, I think, is perhaps Richard Hadlee's favourite shot. Ball short outside the off stump, crashing it square on the offside. And here we go. You'll see this is dropped short, apprehensive of pitching it up in the slot. Far too short. Richard Hadlee up on his toes and cracking it through square cover.
Well, Richard Hadlee's most productive over scored 13 off the bat, but he also lost 10, of course, for losing that wicket. Clive Rice back onto the field in the lead. 114 to him. Dermot Reeve 111, Richard Hadlee 75.
Clive not giving Richard Hadlee any room to swing the bat. Obviously seen him play a tremendous amount. Dermot somewhat apprehensive in that earlier over. Seen the ball disappearing too much leg side with a full swing of the bat. Ended up bowling one very short outside off stump. I think Richard very grateful for that last one. Clive Rice, I don't think he'll be tempted into doing that. Right, Dermot, despite being crashed around a bit in that over, you recoup by getting a wicket. Are you reasonably happy with your overall position?
Reasonably happy, but not too happy with it the way I bowled the last over. I opted to try and bowl it in the block hole, and Richard's one of the best straight hitters in the game, and unfortunately I didn't quite put it there, and he hit me straight for 6. So I might bowl at his hip in the next over.
Yes, I was a little bit apprehensive for you bowling, and that is a magnificent ball by Clive Rice. Pitching middle, and leg, and leaving him off the seam, going straight through to the keeper. Here we go. It's a beautiful ball. What do you think of this, Dermot?
It's a Jaffa.
Jaffa, that sums it up in one. Yes, I was a bit apprehensive of your leg side field, to tell the truth, but you very quickly put men back on the boundary. As you say, he's very good at clipping the ball, not only in that area, but hitting very well straight.
Yeah.
I think you're right, perhaps, in bowling at his hip, but better beware of him clipping it over the top of that short boundary for 6 as well.
Yeah.
Can't win in this game.
Ooh, another 4.
That's another 4. That's a bit disappointing for Clive Rice. I think he's trying to do what you're talking about, bowling it in at Richard Hadlee's hip.
Yeah.
And of course a fine tickle very quickly races off for 4. There he is, he's into the hip, and what does Richard do? He just nibbles it around the corner. What about that last ball of the over? Were you a bit apprehensive being hit straight, as you say? So you
Yes, I opted on the last ball to bowl at his hip, and unfortunately I gave him too much room. It was a bad ball outside off, and he dispatched it.
That's the better ball, just very straight. I think traditionally bowlers in county cricket and test cricket do think about bowling at Richard Hadlee's hip, his chest and so on. But over the last couple of years he has developed this technique of initially it was shoveling it leg side. Now he clips it off his hip quite productively.
Yeah, Richard's, I always think he's one of about the best straight hitters of the ball I've seen. And it's quite long straight here, so I'm not quite sure what to do in the next over.
There he is, clipping it off his hip again. Well, you've got a couple of balls to make up your mind. You better think your tactics quick there, Dermot.
I'll see what happens off the first couple.
7 runs off the over. So Richard Hadlee now getting within striking distance, and the leaderboard changes again. Dermot Reeve now 111, Clive Rice, Richard Hadlee 72.
Just comparing the two fields, the Dermot Reeve field, Clive Rice has got a man in on the leg side, trying to save that one, and he's bowling literally 2-3 inches outside leg stump right into Richard's toes, hoping that the man on the leg side might be able to save that single. Got the added bonus of having 2 catches on that leg side boundary.
Clive Rice then, the man going into lunch in the lead. And he's also got a nice little cushion there. Rice, 124. Dermot Reeve, 103. Richard Hadley, 73.
As in the 1986 challenge, it seems when the pressure's really on, Richard Hadley's batting is somewhat suspect. At the beginning of the last over before lunch, he'd obviously decided to score the 14 runs needed to take him into the lead so that he could bat third in the final session. Rice, sensing that, got the 2 vital dismissals. In his second visit to the wicket, Hadley once again fell victim in his 6th over to the ever-effective Rice. However, the roles were reversed, with 16 coming off the last over, including 2 sixes. We now see Dermot Reeve at the start of his final innings. The scores are Reeve 74, Richard Hadley 124, and Clive Rice, who's bowling 102. Dermot needs to score around 70 runs off his 8 overs if he's to get back into contention.
The date start, John.
Well, I think he's allowed 1 ball just to look at it. Clive Rice, certainly the most successful wicket-taker in this final. He's now taken 3 wickets. Dermot Reeve has taken 1 wicket. And perhaps surprisingly, Richard Hadley, the man who hasn't taken a wicket at all yet. And that's out. Well, he certainly decided to try and put that one over the bowler's head before it started.
A very good ball, in fact, not actually the type of ball to run down the wicket and try and carve over square cover. Here he is down the track, the ball short of a length. It bounces a lot and he gets the top edge. Well, he was suggesting fireworks. Gave himself 1 ball to look at it and then tried to hit it over the top for 6.
Yep.
That would have been a more appropriate shot to the previous ball, Phil. Everybody playing into Clive Rice's hands a bit here.
Yes, that must be very frustrating for Richard Hadley to see Clive getting yet another wicket.
Clive Rice bringing all his experience to bear. He's won this competition twice before. And in Taunton, in the very first year of the Silk Cut Challenge, Clive Rice built himself up a very big lead before he had to go into bat and made it very easy for himself.
Yep.
Very ambitious shot again there from young Dermot Reeve. Mind you, he saw it outside the off stump and thought it was a free hit. Trying to drag it over mid-wicket before. A little bit lucky to get away with it. Perhaps his timing is slightly awry compared to this morning. He had 2 of those very early on in his innings. This morning both went for 4.
There, somebody I think we called back at home in the Scotsman's Row tucked away on the top of the tower block, so they don't have to pay to come in. This ground surrounded by high-rise buildings typical of Hong Kong. Richard Hadley just checking his landing area. That's where the front foot will come down. Beginning to cut up a little bit, so he wants to make sure that he doesn't turn his ankle or anything. He's in the lead at the moment, 124. Clive Rice 110, Dermot Reeve 66. And he badly needs wicket.
Well, he knows he needs wickets, but at the same time he's not gambling all out. He hasn't brought a slip in, so I think he's probably anticipating that Dermot Reeve, who has 86 on the board, needs runs as well if he's going to attempt to win. So, sorry, 66. So Dermot's going to have to play a few shots, and very well fielded there at short mid-wicket. I think Richard feels that Dermot's going to hit the ball up in the air, and perhaps he'll get his wickets that way as opposed to getting him quartered slips.
That one a bit of a loosener. Richard Hadley's first ball since lunch, having been the first to bat.
That was a pretty pacey one, just short of a length, bouncing and hitting the splice. Probably made that thumb throb somewhat. Badly bruised thumb, Dermot Reeve.
Well, he picked out the deep mid-wicket there, hit it well, and I don't think the fielder would have got to it if he'd been 10 yards to either side, but he picked him out perfectly.
He does play this shot very, very consistently, Dermot Reeve. Outside the off stump, he drags it across the deep mid-wicket. I think it's very interesting that Dermot plays that so consistently, mainly from balls that are off stump and just outside. And I think pitch straighter, middle and off, middle and leg, he tends to play much straighter. Having said that, middle and leg, it was exactly the same shot. Parts it over, deep square leg for six. A beautiful shot, exquisitely timed. You see that there was a straighter ball, pitched quite well up, and Dermot Reeve smacks it right over the top and caught beautifully in the crowd. Maybe this fellow should come and field for some of the young pros here.
That was a good catch because it was off a tree. Gets it away again. Oh, and rushes very quickly to the long leg.
Rich will be a bit disappointed with that, I think. A couple straight down the leg side. Lucky to get away with that last one. Only one run.
Yes, he slowed down now as he's walking off, but his first dozen paces were very fast, and I think they showed his annoyance. But Dermot Reeve did himself no harm at all there. He goes up to 74. Hadley still in the lead with 116, and Clive Rice 110.
Clive thinking a lot about that hoik towards mid-wicket. Decided to change his field, put a man deep there on the mid-wicket boundary. Richard, bit of bad luck there. He timed that shot over mid-wicket, or deep square leg rather, extremely well. Nothing wrong with the ball, he just timed it well.
It's a bad one to give away, actually. I've changed my tactics a bit because I think Dermot's under a little bit of pressure and he's got to get some runs. Perhaps to get a wicket or two in Clive bat, so by chancing his arm, he's going to give us a chance. Unfortunately, he's given Clive a bonus wicket. I could certainly do with a couple myself.
Yes, I thought your tactics had changed slightly. When you didn't have a slip, you were talking earlier about the need to get wickets, but obviously with Dermot having to hit the ball, there's a likelihood that he'll hit it up in the air into the outfield as opposed to being caught a slip.
Yeah, that's dead right. So that's the way I look at it. But when I bowl to Clive, I think I may be more attacking to Clive because Clive knows what he's got to do and probably not get many runs, certainly not get out. So we can attack him a little bit more. And because he's a little bit conservative, he could play or make a mistake.
And attack him in the conventional way with a slip.
Yeah, perhaps 3 slips in a gully.
A little bit of test cricket, that would be nice to see. Dermot certainly striking the ball well here on both sides of the wicket. But I'm sure Clive is right. It's beautifully conventional offside stroke, pitched well up, and he hits that through extra cover. Nicely picked up on the fence. There we see that bruised thumb again. Ball bounces, hitting the bat high up towards the splice, and Dermot Reeve very quick to take his hand off the bat. Here we are, the ball bounces up. It's quite high, and there we are, Dermot Reeve taking the hand off.
Clive Rice with that permanently worried look on his face. Got that one away. Again decided on the charge before the ball was bowled and adjusted the shot well.
In fact, decided to improvise there. Changed his tactics slightly with the leg side field. He decided to play more offside. Comes inside the line of the ball and smashes it behind point for 4 runs. That's what one-day cricket's about. As Richard Hadley was saying, you've got to improvise in this game, and that's what Dermot's been doing. Very fine ball by Rice, right up in the block hole into his toes, not giving Dermot any room to swing the bat.
One leg by there, that of course counts to the batsman and against the bowler. And let's bowl him. A Yorker right up.
And a real bonus for Clive Rice. Full length ball, a Yorker, off stump. And Reeve can't jab on it. There he is, right up in the block hole, Yorker. The ideal, I suppose, would be the leg stump Yorker. That was ideal enough, so to speak. An off stump Yorker.
In the last 2 overs, Dermot has moved on without mishap to 86. But the happiest man at the moment has got to be Clive Rice.
Clive, you must be very...
Welcome back to the last innings of the 1987 Silk Cut Challenge. Can Richard Hadley, his cushion of 21 runs now reduced to 3, put the brakes on Clive Rice, the man who's won in 1984 and 5 and was runner-up last year? Here's Clive in the 3rd over, facing a very attacking Hadley.
And Clive Rice ominously poised now, unless we get a Hadley wicket in this over. I'm not sure that we're going to see Clive Rice ever out of the lead again if he takes it during this over.
And very interesting to see that Richard Hadley's become even more attacking here. He knows he needs to get some early wickets. He's got a second slip in, brought the man off that cover fence. This gives him very little margin for error, of course, because Clive Rice is very adept at getting back and smacking the ball through square cover. Little margin for error, but certainly Richard needs a wicket or 2. And in fact, now he's moving the man square to cover that particular shot through points. staying round the wicket.
Richard just grinning up at our commentary point here, saying, well, I've taken your advice, Phil Edmonds. I've put in a second slip. Well, he was lucky to get away with that one, wasn't he? First ball straight down the leg side, and only a dive by Ian Kidd.
I think this is good tactics by Richard Hadley, though. He definitely does need a wicket. However, coming round the wicket gives him very little margin for error. If he strays fractionally offside, he might get some hammer. And a beautiful ball.
And given straightway.
Given absolutely dogmatically by the umpire almost. I'd like to see that again, because coming round the wicket, of course, he's got a pitch in line with the leg stump. And in fact, that looks very, very close indeed, going across Clive Rice.
Yes, he really managed to straighten the ball out again.
And this is very good to see. Suddenly we've got a tremendous competition here. If Richard can sneak another wicket, as he said, it'll make Clive Rice start to think.
And that really was a tremendous ball from Richard Hadley. As you were saying, Phil, to get it in line, he almost had to get it coming back, and he did just that, straightened out off the seam. Big change in the scores, 137 Hadley, 118 Rice.
You see Richard's natural competitiveness coming out here. Very, very determined. He knows, of course, the odds are slightly against him, but if he can get a wicket or two, he's back in the ball game.
First time Clive Rice has been out in the whole competition.
That ball, of course, from round the wicket going across the body of Clive Rice. A little bit too wide, and he's able to guide it down into the third man area. That's why the margin for error is so slight for Richard Hadley, but if he can get one to bounce there, could easily be caught at the slip or gully.
Excellent piece of fielding there from Julian Wood. James Robinson safely home. He's the man running with Clive Rice. Well, there it is, the Silk Cut Challenge Trophy, a magnificent cup, which the winner will receive, as well as the very substantial prize money, £8,000. Dermot Reeve back in position, ready to bowl his second over at Clive Rice.
Lovely over, Richard. Nice to see your natural competitiveness coming through.
Yes, it just keeps the competition a little more honest now, doesn't it? But Dermot can do me a favour. But yeah, very pleased with that. Just coming around the wicket, I think it's just upset Clive a little bit, because he's just not too sure of the line, although I think he realised I'm going to be off stump thereabouts. Didn't quite get it right for the first couple of balls. They're settling down now, and I'm going to make it pretty tough for him.
Do you think that second slip, in fact, has a psychological effect? Because he knows you've got to get him out, and simply by having the man there, he's perhaps a little bit more apprehensive in his own mind.
A little bit, and of course he's still working the ball down fine, particularly down to the third man area, and of course if it gets too fine off his bat, the men are there for the catch. If he gets it too thick, I've got the gully there for the trap as well. So I'm sure that it's a real nerve situation at the moment.
And of course the occasional one is bouncing a bit more, so it'll be interesting to see. What about that ball? It looked a magnificent ball, jacking back on him.
Very unusual to get an LB round the wicket actually, but it kept very low, and he was right back, and I would have thought it was hitting middle and off stump. I hope you agree with that, do you, fella?
Well, I thought it was a very fine piece of bowling.
Thank you.
What about this? Your tactics in this next over? Are you going to stay round the wicket?
I think I will for a few balls and just sort of see what's happening, but then I just might change halfway through, which will make Clive think a little bit more as well as to what I'm trying to do.
Dermot Reeve, his score now down at 43, but he's playing his part, really giving it a go. That one's raced away, chopped fine, and the third man couldn't get round to it. 4 runs.
Fractionally outside off stump. That's one of Clive Rice's favourite shots. Anything outside off stump, he's very quick to give himself a little bit of room. Here he is, he stays leg side, doesn't move across at all, stays leg side and clips it down. It must be very frustrating for Richard Hadley, John, because every run here, being credited to Clive Rice, of course, affects the Rice-Hadley conflict dramatically.
Yes, it does, and the thing is that psychologically, while he's still just that little bit in front, even if he knows the odds are against him, I think he probably has an extra little incentive to go for it. Still in the lead at the moment, 134 Richard Hadley, 128 Clive Rice, and Dermot now down to 38.
Obviously feeling the pressure, not only, or the heat rather, not only of the atmosphere here, but the heat of competition. Sweating a lot, having to take his helmet off and dry himself.
Just too far to the leg side. He's very adept, Clive Rice, at picking the line of the ball very early on and choosing the exact position he's going to work it away through. Halfway through Clive Rice's innings, well, I think he might have thought he'd have been in the lead by now, and he's not. Richard Hadley, 134, Clive Rice, 129, Dermot Reeve, 37. A wicket in this over will really make things interesting. But Clive Rice, out just once in this competition, was never out in the 1984 and 85 competitions. So he'll be concentrating on defending that wicket more than anything else. Fine tuning of the field. Clive Rice checks that no one's been sneaking around. Round the wicket still. But too far, Phil.
In fact, that's the danger bowling round the wicket, of course, because this is slightly wide. Going away from the batsman, and that's Clive Rice's favourite shot, I think, the square cut.
Clive Rice now in the lead.
Richard reverting over the wicket here, John. Very little margin for error, obviously, when he's round the wicket. He'd achieved one significant result in the previous over, but by going round the wicket, the ball travelling away from the batsman allows Clive Rice to smack anything square that's fractionally offline.
Yes, he's lost the advantage of the change of line because Rice had got used to it. Now can he get one or two to seam? There doesn't seem to be much swing left.
No, the ball hasn't swung this afternoon at all. I think Richard's going to have to depend more on the change of pace, perhaps slightly variable bounce, because he can't afford to bowl too far outside that off stump.
Well, he got some variable bounce there.
Indeed. That's what we're talking about. Mind you, had that bounced, of course, it could well have been 4 runs.
Yes, the trouble with the low bounce is it's not really giving him too much of a chance of a catch because they're barely carrying, in any case, through to the keeper. But the one he wants now, after that one's kept low and Clive Rice is worried about that, is the one that jumps a bit.
Oh, and a beautiful ball that moved off the wicket. Not much bounce, of course. Hardly carried through to the keeper, but beautiful ball pitching just outside off stump, moving away. Pleasing Clive Rice, all ends up. Mind you, he opens a face here. Once he knows he's beaten, he opens a face and lets the ball go by.
With 4 runs off the next over, Rice moved on to 138. Here's Hadlee's final attempt to wrest the challenge title.
Richard Hadlee's last over at him. So he's really got to get a wicket here because Dermot, Reeve out of it. And although he can help Hadlee by taking a wicket and pulling Clive Rice's score down by 10, it might well be that Clive Rice at the end of this over will be more than 10 ahead, unless Hadlee can get that wicket.
Very interesting, Richard Hadlee here, knowing that he's got to get a couple of wickets, is going all-out attack, bringing in a short leg, so it's 2 slips a gully, a square point, mid-off, mid-on, and a man at bat pad. So one assumes there might be 1 or 2 little chest balls, little throat balls. Be very interesting to see. Dermot, how do you feel being under pressure here? Every run that you give away is obviously affecting the Rice-Hadlee battle.
I know, it'd be a good time not to be in the event at the moment. I'm just hoping I'm not going to let Richard down too much.
And that's very close indeed. Richard really pleading there. I think that was a genuine appeal. It wasn't simply...
Not a genuine appeal, says Richard. He's just looked up at the commentary position and said he knows it was missing leg stump. There you can see just going across too far. I think it was genuine at the start, but the
looked a lot closer to me than it did to you, obviously, John.
Oh, and that one so nearly got through.
Beautiful ball cutting back into Clive Rice's midriff. He could easily have chopped that onto his stumps. The ball pitches quite shortened. Jags back at him. Here he goes, bouncing quite significantly, chops it down into his pads.
And then nearly onto his wicket as he got it out of his pads. Well, Richard Hadlee certainly giving it absolutely everything. He's causing a lot of discomfort here to Clive Rice.
Clive, knowing that he's got to keep him out, playing just a dead straight bat on that one. But I think it's amazing the psychological difference when you do have 2 slips of gully and a man at bat pad on the leg side. I'd like to see Richard actually bowl a throat ball here to see what happens.
The crowd urging Richard on. He's saying I'm feeling the pace, mate. Clive Rice absolutely content just to keep him out. Only one ball left, and we could find ourselves with the first maiden over of the competition. But for it to be any use really to Richard Hadley, it's got to be a maiden over, a wicket maiden. Instead, it's a single, and that just alters the equation so that Clive Rice is now 11 ahead instead of 9 ahead, which means that Dermot Reeve has got to take 2 wickets to be of any use for Richard Hadley.
Well, as you can probably imagine, the chances of Dermot Reeve dismissing Clive Rice twice in the last over were about as good as my being elected president of the MCC. And so, Clive Rice, who in many people's books is one of the great unsung heroes of modern-day cricket, took his 3rd title in 4 years. A truly remarkable achievement. The final scores were Clive Rice, 145, Richard Hadley, 128, and Dermot Reeve, 27. Before we see Clive receiving the magnificent trophy, Jim Conybeare of Cathay Pacific Airways presents the Best Fielders Award, 2 tickets anywhere on the airline's network, to Alan Telford for his superb catching in the deep. And now Nigel Simon of Silkcut presents the Silkcut Challenge Trophy and a cheque of £8,000 to the 1987 champion, Clive Rice.
Many congratulations, Clive. The last of the interviews, I assure you. Really, you must have felt that it was that over right before lunch that swung it.
Yes, I think that was quite a decisive over in the whole competition because it gave me a lead going into the afternoon. But then that last over that Richard bowled at Dermot suddenly changed things at the end. When I went into the dressing room, I thought I had it pretty well wrapped up. Suddenly I was quite a lot behind, and we had a bit of work to do there. And thank goodness the fielders caught all my catches for me. Thank you, fielders.
For the old boy, your colleague from Nottinghamshire, a great rival from New Zealand, Richard Hadley, I mean, he really did try to keep the pressure on you right to the end. You haven't faced many more hostile overs than that last one from him.
No, I've actually faced them from first slip in Nottingham and watched him bowl at opposing batsmen. And I know what a superb bowler he is. And he is. He's one of the best bowlers in the world today. And thank goodness I survived it.
Well, Clive, that's the 3rd time you've won the trophy. You're going to be asking them whether you can keep it. Most times when people win trophies 3 times, they let them hold on to it, don't they?
Well, the Brazilians kept the World Cup. I suppose they've got a chance of keeping this.
Thanks very much, Clive.
And so for the 3rd time, Clive Rice has won the Silkcut Challenge. Early on, Dermot Reeve, the outsider, played aggressively well. But in the end, it was always a duel between the 2 Nottinghamshire friends, colleagues, and rivals, Hadley and Rice. Congratulations, Clive Rice, the champion of the 1987 Silkcut Challenge.
Arsenal truly back in Europe with a handsome victory and a superb performance here against the Austrian champions. 4 goals for Alan Smith. Before that, won by Andy Linnigan, his first for Arsenal. And after that, with just 11 minutes to go, as you can see, superb solo goal from Anders Limpar. But a great team performance here tonight for Arsenal, warning the rest of Europe that they are truly back in European business. Ogris, the lone scorer, number 7 for Austria Vienna. And a night truly when Arsenal are back on song. And let's have a word now with the 4-goal hero, Alan Smith, with Gary Newbold.
Well, it's a great night for Arsenal and a great night for you, Alan. The side's been inconsistent, so how do you account for tonight?
It was one of those nights where we created a lot of chances and we seemed to put them all in tonight.